But I could remember a lot. I could remember the time I went to school, I was 7 years old. And the teacher was ML Stephen. And I could remember the first song they taught us. I'm going to say the words for you and then sing it afterward. He was said, take off your hat and hang it up. Today the teacher said, but don't take off your thinking cap, just leave that on your head. And the song was, take off your hat and hang it up. Today the teacher said, but don't take off your thinking cap, just leave that on your head. Yeah.
This island has been known by many names. Ai by the Taínos, Santa Cruz by Christopher Columbus, and finally St. Croix. Since its inception, St. Croix has always been the island of changes. So for the Transfer Day Centennial, we are reconnecting the history of St. Croix and the changes this island has seen over the last 100 years. To tell that story, elders and historians in our community have shared their knowledge and experiences with us.
Could you imagine Martin going down King Street on a dirt road?
On August 4th, 1916, the Danish West Indies was sold by Denmark to the United States of America for $25 million in gold. On March 31st, 1917, ownership of these islands were transferred from the Danes to the United States.
But there were other people who would tell you that they were there when this transfer day occurred. And for them, it was more of a formal process more than a personal experience.
At that point, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John were no longer known as the Danish West Indies. Instead, they became the Virgin Islands of the United States.
During the transfer, you had the option of being an American or holding dual citizenship.
There's a lady that I grew up calling Grandma, who was my father's stepmom, who had witnessed it, and she talked about it in terms of some of the general social changes, shifting from basically a Danish sovereignty to an American one. And it was not immediately noticed or appreciated because the Danes, although the territory was not owned by them, they still owned a lot of the businesses and they still maintained their social status in our community.
Throughout the history of the Virgin Islands, St. Croix has always been the more industrious of the islands. With its largest size and fertile grounds, it was one of the largest producers of sugarcane in the Caribbean. Cotton and indigo plantation flourished on St. Croix, but sugar was king. Around these crops, industry grew, and the island knew wealth in abundance. In the Danish West Indies, sugar and its byproduct rum propelled Denmark out of a century-long economic slump to the forefront of European colonial empires.
Was a time of sugar. Sugar was king. Some people took their sugar cane, they put it in bundles and put it in a Hassan cart. And there was what we call a scale house. And of course, the factory at Bethlehem.
Though the islands remained under Danish administration, the plantations were leased to English, Dutch, and French planters and businessmen. Irish and Scots also came as indentured servants, as well as plantation managers and overseers. In addition, enslaved Africans were imported from Africa as well as from other Caribbean islands. This diverse culture framework served as the base for the melting pot of that we have today. By the late 1920s, the U.S. government was well established in the Virgin Islands. The islands were administered by the U.S. Navy, and the social structure of the territory began to change. With its new American status came certain changes that improved the quality of life for the average Virgin Islander of the time.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he instituted Social Security in 1932, no? Yeah, because he admit the little pittance that we are getting from the local government wasn't enough, and he introduced Social Security in 1932. A lot of these young fellas don't know. Yeah, he came here, but he'd been on the bandstand there.
NPS-CHRI has come a long way from 1917. This centennial mark a time of reflection on 100 years of change, experience, and progress. Where do we go from here? Let's look to this new horizon with hope and anticipation of a bright future.
We got some bunch of good people that we have to leave these islands to. And we're doing it.
100 years from now, our children will look back and telling our stories. Let's give them some great stories to tell.